Before glue became our go-to, before dovetails marked mastery, woodworkers still needed a way to lock joints tight, without weighting and without clamps. So they drilled holes that didn't line up, hammered in dry pegs, and forced the joint into tension. It sounds like a mistake, but it's one of the strongest, smartest joinery tricks we've ever had. And today we're going to make drawboring make sense. When I first heard or read about drawboring, it just sounded like a peg, mortise, and tenon joint with a fancier name. I have my mortise here. I've drilled the hole through it, now it's time to add my peg. How much more different could it be? But it's not just about locking a joint in place. It's a whole system that pulls the joint tight while you build. When we clamp something, we're holding parts together while the glue dries, but this goes beyond a clamp. It doesn't just tension the joint, it locks it. So if these two joints look the same, what's the real difference? It's in the holes. With a regular peg joint, the holes line up straight through, so when you drive in the dowel, it just holds everything where it is. But with the drawbore, the hole in the tenon is shifted just a little. So when you drive the peg in, it doesn't just lock it in place, it pulls it tight, automatically. No clamp, no glue. It's like an invisible F-clamp that's permanently attached. Just tension doing all the work, and that tension changes everything. But the beauty of drawboring doesn't stop at pulling a joint together. Any decent craftsman can clamp a joint or pin it shut. We were doing that in high school shop class. What makes this special is that it does something glue can only dream of doing. Drawbored joints move. And here's the wild part. Even though it locks it down, it moves with the wood. That mortise and tenon is going to swell, shrink, flex, just like it always has. But that peg holds everything right where it should be. Not frozen, balanced. Like it was meant to shift a little, but never fall apart. Earlier, I was a little dishonest when I said it was like an invisible F-clamp that was permanently attached to the side, because unlike a clamp or glue that holds a joint still, this doesn't freeze anything in place. It still lets the joint move, but it moves under tension. It's not just clamping, it's reactive clamping, like nature clamping itself. So yeah, maybe calling it an invisible clamp isn't fair. A clamp just holds. This responds. It adjusts. It stays tight when wood wants to loosen. It gives when it needs to breathe. You're not just locking a joint, you're engineering a little bit of tension that fights to stay together as the wood changes. And somehow it just works. Okay, we've got the concept, but what are the brass tacks involved? What makes this joint work starts with one thing: how you plan your layout. Your joint has to be completely made first, and you should be at what's basically the gluing stage. The first thing you need to do is drill a hole through the mortise. Before I drill, I want to figure out exactly where this hole should go. On my peg mortise, I drilled straight through the center of both the mortise and the tenon. Since there's no resistance, this is a safe place. You could even do a couple pegs at diagonals along the tenon. As you can see, I've already got some marks here that I made earlier. But since the drawboard pin will put tension on both parts of my joint, I want my hole in a spot that gives me a strong mechanical pull. What I usually do is aim for the first third of the tenon, about a third the distance from the face of the mortise board. That gives the pin something solid to grab onto without risking a split up here on the tip. But let's go ahead and drill out the mortise hole now. Now this will act as a reference point for my tenon. I can drop the tenon back in and use that same brad point bit to lightly mark the tenon through the hole. To get that powerful springing tension effect, I'll move the mark in. Forgot that part. How much do we move the hole? Think of it like tensioning a bowstring. You want just enough pull to lock it in, but not so much that you snap the dowel. Too little? You won't get that spring-loaded effect. Too much? You'll split the joint or crack the peg. The sweet spot? About a 32nd of an inch for most furniture work, maybe up to a 1/16 of an inch for softer woods or big timber frames. My shoulder's over here, we move backwards towards it. I'm at about 22, so I'm going to go into 20. Now I can take an awl and mark that, and you want to make sure that it's lined up pretty well with this. You don't want to be a little bit off center because we don't want to pull this one way or the other. We want it just to come straight back. And now that I have this one marked, I'm going to make sure that I don't forget later on, and I'll put an arrow right there. But now we can go ahead and drill that out at 5/16 of an inch. If you look inside, you can see that there's a little offset. And this is perfect. This is exactly what we want. We've got the mechanics right. The relationship between those two holes is what makes the joint pull tight. But there's one part just as important as where you drill, the peg itself. If you're thinking, cool, I'll grab a dowel from the local hardware store and pound it in, yeah, we need to talk about dowels. The dowels that we buy today are mass produced. They're cut from flat boards and turned on lathes with cost, not strength, in mind. They might look smooth and perfect, but what really matters is how the grain runs inside. This bundle of bamboo skewers shows what we want in a dowel. Long, continuous fibers that runs from end to end. That's strong, stable, and what holds under pressure. But the problem is that most dowels that you buy don't have grain that reach from end to end. I've got another bundle here where the fibers are angled. You can see that there are fibers that stop in the middle right here. And I've got a store-bought dowel that proves this. This flat edge is the top or the bottom of the board it was cut from. The grain inside runs at an angle, not straight through, which means that the fibers are breaking off inside before they ever reach the end. We're lucky to see it with this one, but you can't always know what's baked inside. In most joints, dowels like this are fine. You tap them in, glue holds them, no big deal. But in a drawboard joint, we're asking for more. We want to really hammer the peg hard as it pulls the joint together. If the fibers aren't straight, that tension will find the weak spot and break it clean off. That's why we don't just want a dowel that looks round. We want one that acts strong. And that means fibers running as straight as possible from top to bottom. The term for these kind of dowels is riven pegs. Unlike store-bought dowels, riven pegs are split along the grain, so the fibers run straight from end to end. That's what gives them their strength and flexibility under tension. Ask for riven pegs at Home Depot and you'll probably get a blank stare, or maybe a broom handle, which is why you'll need to learn how to make your own. Before we get started, yes, you can really get crazy and traditional with this. Grab a log, split it again. This is how it was done. If you think of a true riven peg, the grain needs to run straight through all four sides, showing grain that starts from the top and continues to the bottom. This is the beginning of a true riven peg. It's still rough and oversized, and it would need to be whittled down and then rounded. But what matters is that you can already see that this isn't some perfect cylinder from a store. This shows the natural curve of the grain as it twisted through the log. But most of us have no desire to go old school down to this level. Instead, I'm going to go with a piece of maple I cut with a bandsaw. If you can go with it slightly higher in moisture, you'll have tougher fibers. If I look at this, I'm at about 14%. This stock came from the same log that the natural riven came from, but you can go with kiln-dried lumber if that's all you have. The most important part of this is making sure my fibers are straight up and down. So I'll take a chisel and split off the edge. If the fibers are straight, the chisel moves in a straight line, but if it veers off like it did up here, I get a read on how the grain's running and which way it wants to go. So if I split this section right here is what I really want to use because it's so straight. So what I'm going to do is run a ruler next to that straight edge that I like, and I'm going to bring it over to the bandsaw and cheat so that I can stay along this edge right here. And I like it here as well as over here, so I'm going to cut just this section out. With my stock now split along the grain and cleaned up, I'm going to go ahead and straighten up the other side. Now I can use a thin strip jig to cut this a little over 5/16. And this is my improvised riven pin, which is going to be far better than any dowel that you can pick up in the store. But we still need to make this round. We need to take the corners off one side so you can use a block plane like this to do that, or even a knife. It needs to be able to fit in the end of a drill. I'll start with a 3/8 wrench and use the rounded end to clean it up. It does get hot, so you'll want some water. And I'm going to come in here with the other side. What I like about the rounded side is I can put a little bit more pressure to make it a little bit more narrow. And then I'll come in here with my 5/16, which is my final size. If it catches like that, I go back to the 3/8. And it does get very hot, so be careful. Because this is going to be slightly over 5/16, I can come back in with a sanding pad and clean it up. And we'll check this. That's 5/16 right there. The last final thing that I need to do is I need to come in here and I need to make it really tapered on one side. It needs to be tapered so much that it'll fit and wedge itself between your two pieces here, and that works pretty good for me. And I'll worry about cutting this off after I pushed it through. Okay, our riven pegs are made, the holes are offset, and now we can move on to the best part. Locking this joint together. I've got the joint open wide because I want you to see what happens. I've sharpened the end of my riven peg, not to make it easier to start, but so we can really watch what's going on. As I hammer this in, keep your eye on that gap. That pin's going to suck the joint closed tight. No clamp, no glue, just tension doing all the work. If if we compare the two, you can see that I've got a little tiny bit of a gap here. I can never get these completely closed. But if we look at this side, it is completely closed off. And that's it. A little offset, a riven peg, and you've got a joint that clamps itself. Tight, tough, and timeless. Thank you so much for being here with me, friends. If this helped you see joinery a little differently, give it a like. Maybe hit subscribe. And just look over here on the screen. A huge thanks to my patrons who help keep this work going. If you'd like to be a part of the team or just throw a tip in the jar, there's a link down in the description. And remember to keep making things.